so I didn't bring out too many papers. So don't get nervous. So we come together on this Holy Family Sunday celebrating all that that might mean to us. And if we went through this church today, we'd probably have everybody give somewhat of a different answer as to what their family means to them and what it means to strive to be a holy family. And if you ever think you accomplished that, or if it's possible. And it's a welcome insight, I think, that the two of the readings we had today, the first one from Samuel and then the gospel reading, both talk about family conflict. Praise the Lord. Hannah was hoping to have a child. Now, Elkanah had two wives, Peninnah and Hannah. Peninnah had children. Hannah did not have a child. She was very concerned about this. And so she was praying about it. And if you read the story, the part of the story that was missing today, she went to the temple and prayed. And you know how sometimes when you pray, you're quiet, you're not making any sound, but your lips are moving? You ever been through that? Have you ever been through that? No. And so Hannah was praying that way, and Eli, the priest of the temple, thought she was drunk. And he said to her, you know, you're a drunken woman. You can't be in the temple praying like this. And she said, look, I'm not drunk. I'm praying for my child. I'm just moving my lips, but I'm praying inside. So anyhow, she went on, and he said, okay, then I'll pray for you to have a child. She went and she had a child, and she came back to the temple a long while later after the child was weaned. We heard in the scriptures. And she says to Eli, do you remember me? I was the woman you thought was drunk and praying. Well, here's my child. You prayed, I prayed, here's my child. So I bring this child back to the temple, and I turn this child over to the Lord. Like every parent would probably say, Lord, take care of my baby. That's kind of what she was saying when she turned this child to the Lord. So in the first reading, it was that story of family conflict. And of course, in the second reading, the gospel there was another story of family conflict with Jesus when his parents came, and they were upset over his visit in the temple and his teaching in the temple. And both experiences show these families growing through conflict, through conversation and prayer. And Jesus, we can see, was growing up. And he was speaking out for the first time. Do you remember the first time you talked back to your parents? I mean, we don't have to go through all that here, but you know, that's what Jesus is doing. This is the first time he's finding his voice. And he goes out on his own without telling his parents. It might sound familiar to some parents here. And they had to go look for him, it said, with great anxiety. And when they find him, they said, what are you doing? He says, what do you think I'm doing? He says, I'm doing what God asked me to do, what my Father asked me to do. They're going, well, what's that supposed to mean? They had no clue. So there's another story of family conflict that they were dealing with. And then at the end of the gospel, it says, Jesus went down with them and came to Nazareth, was obedient to them, and his mother kept all these things in her heart. However, Joseph and Mary knew that things had changed. They knew that Jesus was changing, and Jesus knew that he was changing. Jesus was finding his voice. And if you remember the time you found your voice, or the first time you began to speak out to somebody, or maybe even to your parents, you know this can be a scary thing because you don't always trust that you have what it takes to speak out. But when you find your voice and that becomes secure in you, you begin to speak out. And Jesus was just at the beginning of that story of his own life, speaking out, using his voice. And even though in the second reading it says that God's children, we are God's children now, and what we shall be has not yet been revealed, what we shall later be will be revealed as we find our voice and speak out. We can't just know something's going to be revealed in us without our participating in it. That is the challenge. Hopefully our families give us the encouragement and the background and the training and the atmosphere of learning how to find our voice and how and when we can speak out. So we look at the Holy Family. And what do we call them? How do we refer to them? Are they like a half family, a step family, an adopted family, a blended family, a foster family, a refugee family? In our world today, many times when we label families like this, we refer to them as broken families. But I think that's the point. Jesus was born into our human condition. He was born into a broken family. He was born into our brokenness as human beings. And today we talk about intact families, mother, father, and children, or nuclear families. But the variety of family units today also include divorced families, separated families, single-parent families, same-sex families, transgender families, many different categories of family life we face today. Our church communities can be a welcoming center to all of these families. People may already feel uncomfortable or rejected at times because of their family situation, and our church communities can make a great difference and help our families to grow in holiness. The feast of today tells us that families in all these conditions and circumstances are holy families as they converse and pray together about what it means to be a family. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph became a holy family, an example to us by the way they handled their situation. As families shift and change through sadness and death and distance and through grief and celebrations of joy and togetherness, their holiness comes from their ability to pray and share and work together. There's a story told about an old man that was sick and dying, and he asked his children to go out, his 3 children to go out and pick up sticks from the forest. And they came back to the father, and he said, "Now, I want you boys each to take 1 stick and break it in half." And they all did. They broke a stick in half. Then he said, "Now bundle up all the other sticks." They bundled up all the other sticks, and he said, "Try to break these sticks." And try as they might, they couldn't break the bundle of sticks. The father says, the moral of the story is individually you may be broken, but together you are an unbreakable bond. And that's what we are called to in families, to understand that and try to make that a reality. So then we need to be aware of the contributions and struggles of many different kinds of families. The struggles of African American families. How has the experience of slavery in their past shaped them? Or the current experience of racism or violence in the streets shaped them? Native American families. How has the experience of being removed from their land shaped them? Muslim families, how has the experience of bigotry and discrimination shaped them? Jewish families, how has the experience of the Holocaust and anti-Semitism in their history shaped them? Immigrant families, how has the experience of leaving their homes for good and coming to America shaped them? In all of these experiences, there is fear, intimidation, and readjustment, just like Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. They faced that same fear. They faced a similar intimidation. They had to leave because Herod was after the babies, and they had to go through a big readjustment. So we gather today to celebrate the wonder, the beauty, the challenge, and struggles of family life. During COVID and Delta and Omicron variants, how are we surviving? What have been our mental health struggles as a family during this time? What extra effort, sensitivity, and care do we need to make in our relationships? This is an incredibly unique opportunity, and it is in our hands. This is a part of the work of Christmas in which we all play a part, and this work is ours, and it begins today. Christmas is the time when we see things anew. On Christmas Eve, if you went to church, you heard Isaiah say, "The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light." That's us. We've been through a lot of darkness this past year, but we have walked in that darkness, and now we've made it to this point. We've survived. We're here today. And now we're in the light of the Christmas season celebration yesterday, Holy Family this day, and the many celebrations coming up in the next few weeks. And now because we are celebrating this season, we are seeing and celebrating the light of Christ. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel says, "You cannot worship God and look at another human being with contempt." Oh my Lord, can you imagine that? What do we do with that? How do we reflect on that statement? You cannot worship God and look at another human being with contempt. I think to myself, I go, I better not think too hard. In the newness of Christmas, in the light of this season, in the realities of family life, we have come together because we believe there is hope. And we live that hope. We have survived until now, and so we begin again. We start over. This is the season. We can start over. In the second reading, we hear these words, "See what love the Father has bestowed on us, that we may be called the children of God, and so we are." Once again, we hear that we are the church. There are many who are living in broken down stables who need to know that they are loved and have the potential of being a holy family. You and I need to carry that message out of here today. We are the light. We are the only ones that God has to do this work. If you are ready and able, we cannot wait any longer. Let this work begin.